Welcome to another dynamic episode of a podcast. Today we have a special guest, Daniel Cobb with DST, Don't Survive Thrive Academy. It's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And Dan's been a friend for a while of myself. We connected over the last couple of years and just had the pleasure of taking up his sport, or I guess for me, more of a hobby right now, learning it. But and we were just chatting that day, and I was like, we got to get you on the podcast to talk about your business, because we started talking more business stuff in nature the other day, and I was just like, oh, this is such a natural fit. So I'm excited to have you on. I'm sure other people are interested to know more about the business side, and or if they are like local to the Winnipeg scene, what they can expect when they come to your academy. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's great. And what quick intro there for me. What let's chat about you, Dan. Tell the listener here a little bit about yourself, and what as whatever makes sense for segueing into the business chat after that. But what really got you started in this?
Yeah, sure. I've been on and off with martial arts since I was 3 years old. So since I was really young, I was involved in martial arts. And basically, we moved to Canada from Brazil when I was 12 years old. Got into playing football, wanted to be an NFL player. That didn't pan out. But got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I was about 16, about turned 17, Steve. And I could start sort of seeing how I could become like a professional athlete with regards to taking care of my body, you know what I mean? Having what I do with my body be sort of a sport and make a profession out of it, sort of thing. So it was sort of this weird sort of mix that got me really interested in getting involved professionally in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My instructor moved away in 2000 and what year was it now? 2014 to San Diego. And in that process, he left the academy for myself and a group of partners to purchase the school from him. And then through that period of time and the challenges that you have or one might have in a new partnership, I started learning a lot about business as I started to take over some responsibility for partners I was buying out at the time. And yeah, it's been a real trip, and really wish I could have made some of the decisions I made 4 years earlier. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I did not know that about this already, and I could not agree more about like partnerships along the way in business. I mean, it's very much like a marriage, or it can be a relationship of sorts, whatever you want to call it, but it is something to be taken seriously. And I'm sure there's lots of lessons, not necessarily in one way or the other, but along that journey and communication, expectations of everyone involved. I don't know all the details, but I'm sure that there's lots of stories there you could reminisce on, and hopefully are laughed at later down the road.
Yeah.
If there was anything that was rocky at all, because it can happen. It happens lots. I think anyone who's in business knows that that will happen at some point, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Especially with guys that fight, or guys and gals that fight. As a sport, did you guys have a fight off?
Why?
I tease. I shouldn't joke.
You know what? I mean, it's one of those things where if some of them would have shown up to work, then we could have had a fight off. But
right. Too funny.
No, it's different. I had 4 different business partners, and each one, it was sort of a different situation. Some were more amicable than others. So, and one of them, I ended up getting sued for the first time, and getting, with the last one, not the last one, the second last one out. And, it's a trip, but it's going to happen. I mean, if you're doing stuff, it's going to piss some people off along the way, and you're going to have disagreement. Sure. I heard this line, I can't remember from who, but it was saying, if you don't offend anybody in your communication, then you're not communicating at all.
Interesting.
If you don't say anything that ever pisses anybody off, you're probably not saying much.
Yeah.
So, totally. Yeah. Anyways, it is what it is, man.
No, for sure. Let's get in. Let's I mean, like when we were first talking about this, and I was like a delayed attendee wanting to do it from a little while back, and I finally get into it here. And some things that stuck out to me were the high level stuff that you talked about with me, you're like, Steve, you should come do this. Like, not like selling, but you're just like, hey, like you're gonna find like more confidence in this stuff. You're gonna learn a lot more about your body and like some different. I forget the wording they used. You're gonna repeat it probably better than I can, but and all this stuff. And then since doing it though, now I literally talked about it yesterday on the golf course with my dad, my uncle, and one of their good friends. Shout out to Lance. I nearly didn't remember who he was exactly until we got in the truck yesterday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've known this guy for years. And I was questioning it. Anyways, but I was talking about them on the golf course, and I'm like, it was so interesting. Years ago, I took boxing for like a couple years in a row. I was just out of playing hockey, and I thought that was a good sport to know. There was a lot of skipping and a lot of cardio. And I would say, as much as I learned stuff in that, I didn't learn as much technical stuff as I have in the last few months here, and just the step-by-step process of different moves and gaining more confidence and controlling someone else and or being controlled by someone when you're rolling with them. What is the kind of like the way that you would describe your process? Because now I've gone through it, but what would you say to someone that's maybe thinking of getting into it, or that you're chatting with in general, like you did with me there?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'll tell people is, getting involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will make someone much more in tune with their body, and like way more in tune with their body, because you bring so much attention to detail, to every movement of your body to be able to pull off a move, right?
Totally.
And for us here, we have a process which you're going through where we really baby step people to eventually getting into full-on sparring. Traditionally, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies, right? You go in day one and you're just thrown in, it's a little bit baptism by fire. And it's surprising that there aren't more lawsuits across Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies, because people got injured. People on their first day, on their first week, second week, getting hurt. And sometimes it's serious injuries, because people don't know where to fall, where to land, etc. But we really walk people through a process now, which we gradually give them a little bit more, and that way they can sort of baby step their way. It just reduces the risk big time, and so we found injuries come down.
Totally. Well, even Evan was teaching something the other day with me. This is probably going to be one of the funner podcasts, because we literally see each other a couple times a week if we're at the right times. But Evan was talking about something specifically with the hand and how we were like placing it on the mat, like one way versus the other. I forget the specific move, but in terms of it being like a roll. Yeah. And if I didn't really, I'm like, oh, whatever, like that wouldn't matter even when he was explaining it. He's like, it's so important. And then it caught half my hand like not in that roll. I'm like, oh, you can feel like if it's not palm up or whatever. I was like, yeah, you would see how you would accidentally snap your wrist real easily just based on like very little weight. Like we weren't even doing the full move at that point. Yeah. So very important.
Yeah, the attention to detail. The attention to detail that it brings. Going as you're working through jiu-jitsu, just for the skills of jiu-jitsu. It's pretty amazing. It can make, I'm sure it has made me a little bit of an annoying consulting client for the consultants I've hired in the past. And some of them are a little bit more sort of big picture thinkers, and I want to know all the minute and little details about stuff. But yeah, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, I'm in like an early, I don't even know what I am, maybe a dozen times in, maybe more. I don't know. I must be closing in on, I think, like for the first like step. But how many levels are there to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when we like talk about that? Because like I'm a newcomer. I know it's very common language in there. I'm kind of absent-minded to some of it. I didn't grow up with this thing, but what does that look like for people, and how do they like progress in the sport?
Big picture, the belts is what we use, right? Like most martial arts, we've got 5 main belts that are sort of 4 that are earned, and then you have some different belts that later on are more sort of recognition of how long you've been a black belt for. So you've got white belt, which you don't earn. Well, you do earn. You walk into the academy, and
I got one of those. Yeah.
You got a blue belt, you got a purple belt, you got a brown belt, you got a black belt. And then after black belt, again, if you've been a black belt for like 25 or 32 years, you get a different colored belt. Another 10 years, another colored belt, etc. Really, the process is, what makes us different from other martial arts, is you actually have to demonstrate that you're able to pull off. It's not so much can you pull off specific moves as it is can you improve your positioning And that's very different from, say, karate, where you just have to show certain high kicks, yell at the right time, make it look explosive or powerful or whatever. And here you go. Here's your black belt at 2 years in, right? And you end up with a bunch of 10-year-olds who have black belts, and the parents are delusional, thinking that means something, for the kids in terms of being able to defend themselves, right?
Interesting.
Where for us, first of all, you can't get any of those belts I just described to you unless you're at least 16 years old. So you can't get your blue belt unless you're 16. And then what happens is you need to be able to prove certain basically skills. You have to be able to basically, like a blue belt, generally speaking, can beat up all the white belts. A purple belt can beat up all the blue belts and white belts. A brown belt can beat up all the purple belts, blue belts, and white belts. And black belt, all the other belts. Of course, there's levels to this stuff, and there'll be the guys who are hyper competitive about it, who might be a blue belt for beating up or brown belts or whatever it is. But generally speaking, for the everyday hobbyist, you're not seeing as much of that at play.
Absolutely.
At blue belt, you basically have gotten past the stage of where you've got some skills at that point, but there's a lot to learn to put together still.
Totally. Well, I can see it in like what we're doing right now. It's kind of like, we'll call it laying the foundation, learning basic moves, different things. We see other folks on the other side of like the mats, if they are rolling there, and it's like they're moving at a very different pace than we are. They're in different gear too. It's very obvious that there's a lot more skill there, and they could turn me and probably most of the class into a pretzel real quick situation where you're tapping, or even if you were able to tap based on where they have you. So
yeah,
it's very impressive to see. And maybe a little bit more too. Like I'm thinking more just like super basic, like the physical space that you're in there. What are we rolling on? We have the walls with mats, floors with mats, and then the square space there. For a little bit more of like that in the sport, what's the layout here really look like for folks?
So for the school itself, yeah, as you see, the majority of the space is just mat space. Basically what we have, let's see if I'll tilt it here a little bit so you can see.
Awesome.
So what we've got over here is we have foam blocks underneath these mats, and in between the foam blocks and the mats are, I think it's about 2 layers of 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch of plywood. And so what that does is it creates a really nice flooring, so that when we do takedowns or anything like that, we really reduce the risk of getting injured, while also not having too soft of a surface to train on. You might even be able to lift a little bit of the mat off here. Yeah. So.
Oh, cool.
Training on.
Shout out to fujimats.com.
Yeah.
Good on them to have that on there. Yeah.
But these are super, super good mats. And
wicked.
Yeah. I mean, you're lucky, because when these things first come out, they're very abrasive. Very abrasive, so your skin just gets cut up.
Oh, like sticking on it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And they're stiff when you first get them, compared to now they've been worked in big time.
Oh, good. Well, I planned that. Yeah, I only showed up later because I wanted to take some more time. Yeah, for that to happen.
It was brutal at the beginning, though. But having the subfloor is great. I think we're the only Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school in the city with a subfloor. We're the first, if there is another school that has it. I don't think there are any other schools that have subfloor. That's what you call these. And there might be another judo academy in the city that does as well.
Cool.
We really make a point of investing in so we consider ourselves a premium jiu-jitsu facility in the city. So so whether that's a schedule, which we've got classes in the morning, afternoons, evenings, weekends, or with it's the mat quality or the instruction and the level of attention by the instructors here.
Totally. No, you guys got a lot going on there. But what I don't know how far you want to go into business, but what a couple of things I've noticed recently that I've been like chatting about was the split occasionally, because it's kind of like the classes you're just dropping in, just to explain to the listener, like it's drop in for whatever level of class that you're at. So I'm in, it's called First Steps, right? I think is what that's in, right? Yeah, beginner. So those classes are, so like morning, middle, and evening. So you have 3 times a day to go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday is a little bit different, but nonetheless, and then there's other classes alternating throughout the day.
That's right.
as such. And one thing that I've noticed, and I was a little bit like not like surprised, I guess, but at one point in the day for a few of the classes that I've attended, and I think it is the specific time slot, but half the class for us in the beginners are female. And compared to some of the other on the rolling mat portions, it seems to be more male
Mhm.
dominated that way. Are you seeing a lot more female athletes or folks, taking on the sport recently? And yeah,
Totally. Yeah, big
yeah,
time. Can't really speak as to what the reason is, to be honest, Steve.
yeah,
Think too before let's say prior to 2020-ish, we were sort of on an old model jiu-jitsu academy. Show up, you're just rolling right off the hop, and I think that turned off a lot of women. There was the odd savage who would stick around,
right,
but now with this process, we actually do see a lot more women. I think we're stickier, so I think it's just easier for people to stick with it now. That there's more of a systematic approach and
right.
progress to learning. Yeah.
Did
And
you get some?
women, if they feel comfortable in a space, they'll stick around. It's just that
Totally.
if it was more of not quite Fight Club, but
Yeah.
a little bit more of that vibe, I would say, beforehand. So
Okay. So yeah, evolution of culture, I guess, within your company is what you've seen, and is what I'm kind of like interpreting that as, and just
yeah,
yeah, more welcoming. I mean, it seems super welcoming every time I've been in there, but I mean, like things evolve and change over time, especially if you're taking over an existing business. And I don't know how many years like back that goes now for you guys, but there's yeah, you see, and there was yeah, I mean, there's all skill levels in that as well. I've seen other belts in the rooms in my classes. I was very intrigued by that. I was like, just in general in sports, it's not always seen, and not that I was assuming anything about this particular one, but most of the classes have been more male. And then a couple of times slots I showed up to, I was like half the class is female, and they're usually paired up with other females within that class too, just to describe the listener. And males usually with males, but once in a while there's intermingling there, and I think it's a great skill set too. I mean, you look at if there's any kind of like concern about being like, I mean, attacked. The one thing that popped in my head was actually just like the Winnipeg thing or whatever right now, little higher potential crime. The vibe is maybe not as positive sometimes walking around. Like people joke about the downtown thing, but seriously, like I mean, not that I walk around with like overconfidence in that regard, knock on wood, nothing happens or whatever. But, after coming in and thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I wouldn't be like as afraid. I wasn't really that worried before about being a guy, and having done other, experiences, but I would just treat it very differently now. I'd be like kind of like pinned down or just avoid the whole thing based on how some of the training goes for us, and learning how that works. So that popped in my head when I was in there. I was like, dang, we got some armed ladies leaving the academy there, right? With the skill set. I think it's really cool. I think we should have more of that.
totally. And
Yeah.
you know what, Steve, like in big part, this is what I always found kind of remarkable, right? Because sometimes people would say, like, I was out of Montreal a few weeks back, and some of the guys I was with, they asked me, so Daniel, like, does this mean that, you're walking around and you just feel like, oh, I could just, kill all these people, blah, blah, blah. Or, I think it's the opposite. I think what happens is I'm much more likely to walk away from a fight because I think I can appreciate much more what could happen if, shit went wrong, went really bad.
Totally.
So, I think that the real benefit, people, there's so many guys, there's so many women, period, people who just assume they can throw a punch, assume they know how to throw a kick because they've watched it in movies over and over and over again. Yeah. They've never hit a punching bag. They've never actually been taught where it needs to land on your knuckles. You know what I mean? They've never actually seen it, for example.
I took boxing. I broke my hand a couple of times in fights. Still boxing break. It's more common break in there, right? But you can still feel it. I can feel like the bone where it like hit. Even having that, like we'll call it limited training there, right? You still break your hand, or totally. You'll break other parts of you, right? So
totally, you drive that fist. You know what I mean? Really hard with no wraps and no cover over it through somebody's cheek, and it hits somebody's tooth, and that, you know what I mean? Like the amount of damage to your own body from it, and people make those assumptions, right? And so you do something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you realize how vulnerable you can be if you end up in a bad spot. And I think it just makes you more likely to not go down that back alley. You know what I mean? Oh, you see that people over there and it kind of looks sketchy. Maybe I'll take the long way. That might be a little safer, and I'm not going to deal with that problem. So you you just have more of an appreciation, I think, for what could happen.
Yeah, totally. That's a good segue. I definitely agree with that too. I think in general, I mean, and probably being a little bit older too versus being younger in general, maybe you think a little bit differently, more, yeah,
Well, when you're
more
someone who
protective,
has
right? So,
something to lose, right?
yeah,
You're worried about losing. But, it's a sad reality for whatever causes there may be out there, that there are a whole lot of people who don't have anything to lose.
yeah,
And yeah, like you're saying, in the city, there's plenty of people in the city, you know what I mean, who'd be willing to stab someone and they won't think twice about it. And if you were to ask them, do you know the police is going to come and arrest you? Intellectually, I'm sure they know that, but
yeah.
so
Yeah, there's been a couple cases recently too, where I'm talking like more gruesome stuff. Don't want to get dive into too much because it's really gross on here. I don't know if this totally would like help necessarily in terms of like saying that at all, but I've seen, because now it's on my algorithm, right? And I see videos all the time now. Because I like posted a couple things with you guys and enjoyed my experience and stuff. But now it's showing like other people that like maybe not like they're not the direct person involved, but there was like a restaurant one the other day that I saw, and it was someone else like at the restaurant or a bystander that then controlled the situation by grabbing the person and putting them in a headlock, and it was in like one of our moves, and then it was obviously then it got tagged for reason maybe you should take this or whatever, because I think it probably deflated that situation from escalating way further because they're able to control that person's body and then not worry. So not like we were kind of saying like an everyday tool to go and like use, but I'd rather know this than not at the end of the day.
big time.
So better to have that in the tool belt.
Yeah, there's something too about you. There are certain things I have this conversation all the time, Steve, with parents. You know what I mean? There's parents.
Right.
You get these parents who come in. Oh, my son is going to decide what he's going to do for fun. I was just like, do you let your son decide if he's going to learn to read? Do you let your son decide if he's going to learn swimming? Like,
Yeah,
think
that's super true. A skill set that you should probably have in some regard, right? Like
skill. Every animal in the animal kingdom knows instinctually, generally speaking, mostly how to swim and how to fight.
yeah,
You take a little puppy and you put him in the water, he'll start,
yeah, their feet just start going.
Yeah, you've got occasional little animals like bulldogs that might just sink; they're just too dense, or basset hounds, whatever.
Yeah.
But they'll know how to swim. You take babies; babies will float. Apparently,
Yeah, that's a weird thing.
which
They
is
just end up going on their head, right? Like you can dunk them in the water. I saw that for the first time. I was terrified of seeing that in a like in a video, but I'm like, oh, that's like
it's nuts, right? But for adults, we somehow, if you don't learn to swim all your life and stuff as an adult, you'll just drown. And similarly with again a little puppy, you mess with a puppy enough, it'll show you its teeth and it knows how to bite.
Yeah,
Human
totally.
beings will go into the fetal position.
Right.
So you have to condition it. It's a life skill. It really is, to teach people to defend themselves. And familiar with that Maslow's needs, right? Right at the bottom is sort of the need for safety and these sorts of. It's like either the very base or the one up of it.
Right.
The need for safety, shelter, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff. And so learn to defend yourself. The idea is if you never really learn how to do those things, you're never going to quite achieve the potential of the human being you could have become. Like now you've got all these guys getting involved, like Mark Zuckerberg's getting involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
These guys see value in it. I mean, you've felt it. I mean, it's really, it's amazing to fit. It's kind of tough for me to remember what it's like before Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, you're doing kind of a version of it since you were 3. So, yeah, I don't really remember much, back then either, except for when I was 4. I think I attempted to be a dog in a Safeway and bark at my. She tells a funny story about this. She's like, "Yeah, you really had this shtick for about 2 months." Anyways, but in terms of like sports, you mentioned like kids, and I think that you hit a valuable in there because actually it's funny because I do triathlons and I swim in the mornings and then I usually come midday to go and do that, and it is such like an invaluable skill. I mean, I'm swimming at a different pace than a lot of folks in the like in general that people normally probably go at, but the the basics of that as a skill are Like that should almost, I mean, I know the gym class doesn't do that at school, but it should almost be like a thing that you have to do in that sense. I'm kind of surprised that that's not in the system. I know there's not a lot of technicalities. I mean, but the reason you do it is so you don't drown,
Yeah.
and maybe everyone learns how to do it in like a shallow pool, because like you don't need much really. You can learn how to do it in the shallow end at, Pan Am locally here or otherwise. I think it's a very fundamental thing, like what you're saying. But on the gym and school side of things, the way my brain was just going is like, do you see, um, I know there's an obvious connection to wrestling. I talked with Evan about this a little bit because he also coaches or teaches a class, I believe, around that. That's more his background. Evan's one of the instructors there, listener. Great guy, as well as Aaron. Shout out to all the staff working there. Is there a specific sport that you see more, folks come in or with a specific sport background, like into there as a segue that you have come across, or is it genuinely a mix? Like I know you came from football. I'm more hockey, like, and then I got into biking and a bunch of other stuff now. But is there something that you see that people, come in, I'll call it a cross train kind of thing with you guys for anything in particular?
Tough to say. I wouldn't say there's any one in particular. I would say maybe because of school years, high school, elementary school, a lot of people have played some form of team sports and then come into it.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to a specific. Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a specific sport that carries over. Like
Yeah. Do you ever do? Actually, I had this thought, pardon me, in the shower this morning. Thought in the shower. I was like, I wonder if you ever do. I'm going to put you on the spot with this one, but it is top of mind now, and I did not prep you with this one at all. For a listener here, do you ever do like a team building thing, like for like first time stuff? I know that there's more involved because I know but we did like a little intro sesh. Do you ever do like that with like a group just to show them like the basics of stuff?
We have done that before.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really cool thing.
So we've done stuff with business groups who'll come in and sort of like a team building experience, things like that, an activity together.
Yeah,
that has been great. We used to have a sales process, an onboarding process, where members, the process you've kind of gone through, but or are going through, but basically we used to have a 6-week course where people would have to come 3 times a week. But one of the things it did was it really prolonged the amount of time a buyer got to experience, the gap between when they think about the purchase and wanting to purchase and when they actually start the activity and getting to use the membership was sometimes too big. I mean, you get a course that started 1 week ago and now there's 5 weeks till the next session.
Right.
You're going to wait 5 weeks. That's quite problematic for a business. So it was important for us to change it. So the day you decided you wanted to get started, we could get you started that day.
Right. Yeah, because you're running like classes daily in that sense, right? And I guess like just for right now for your updated like process, it'd be like it's 3 weeks, right? That was the thing that I think I started off with, right? 3 weeks, and then that you have to come so many times to get like see it, feel it out, and you guys offer kind of like a proof thing as well. Like if you don't like it or whatever, you get a refund from it. But if you do and you're continuing, then it's I believe there's some kind of like discount or it's just a weekly charge from there that I think is really reasonable when you look at. I'm just going to use numbers here. I think I see this on the credit card thing, but I think it's like $45 a week. Even if I have a week that I only come once, I always think of it like, oh, cool. What did I learn this week that, we were talking about before about like maybe could save my life in an extreme situation or whatever. Like, what was the situation like there? Because it's not just, I'm sweating every time. It's like that last 15 minutes, all of a sudden I'm breaking out in a pretty heavy sweat from seemingly doing very simple moves. So it is a workout, but on top of that, it's like we were both, illustrating before, it's a mental, you're learning with your own strength and ability, what is, beneficial. And some moves I find too, like one side I'm stronger on in terms of like how I'm holding the other person, which maybe is not the best thing yet or whatever this early stage, but I know that there's tendencies that I find in myself that are, within there with different partners throughout the week. And it's also great to meet other people doing that too. So
totally. Dude, the benefits, just keep over time as you're doing it. It'd be incredible, actually. An exercise for you is start writing a list somewhere of the benefits, of the pros and the cons, and watch that list of pros just over time. Just get lost and longer and longer. And there's stuff right now that you might not write on that list based on where you're at. But maybe 2 years from now, you'll start writing and you'll be like, wow, I did not really foresee that this would have been something that would have landed on the list. Like, I tell you one for me that really blew me away.
Like it.
When I was, again, I really sort of had this vision of being a full-time school when I was about 18 years old. That's when I started. Yep. I'm 33 now. What started happening was, because my skill level was, let's say, already at a certain level relative to most of the people getting started, I was able to spend a lot of time mentoring guys who were many years older than me. Some people who were CEOs in multi-billion-dollar companies, and we developed this relationship of mentorship, where life-wise and business-wise, I was getting this mentorship from some of these guys.
Interesting.
But I was mentoring them in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and it was such a great exchange, between us. Never foreseen that, an 18, 19-year-old could have this person who's so much better positioned business and career-wise to be able to be taking an interest in giving me advice. One of the guys, who's a successful businessman who I teach on a regular basis, he was actually a guest instructor or a guest professor at one of the universities here. And he was shocked at the level of basically interest the university took in what was he teaching while he was there. Like I said, nobody ever reviewed his curriculum, nothing, like whatever. And I get, this guy on a weekly basis. He lends me his ears. I can ask questions, whatever it is, while I'm teaching, or just before, just after I'm teaching jiu-jitsu. Like the amount of learning, and I mean, there's all sorts of other stuff, but that's that really came as a surprise to me. That's one of those things.
Right. I don't know. I could totally see it. That's awesome. I find one of the bigger things I do find, like in the business thing, and I'm just reading a book from a local Winnipeg here from Mike Fata. I forget the title. It's called Grow. Just getting through it. I'm not much of a reader. In fact, words usually crisscross under my eyes here, not because of focus, just a little dyslexic. Anyways, I'm working my way through this thing, and it's interesting to see like when folks like have made it. He's a great example. He puts lots of great information out there on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, he does a little bit on like Instagram too, and I think when you get to that stage in like a career where you have kind of like had some bigger successes, the biggest thing that you do want to share from what I'm viewing right now, and him and other folks too that have been successful, this is just a book I'm reading, is the willingness to share and want to get other people to be at that level of engagement within their own business or whatever they're doing. And I mean, one of the things that I took away from that book recently too, and I think it is certainly applicable to your business and some other things that I'm doing right now too, is if you don't have the passion for it, it doesn't matter if it pencils out as like the $1 million idea, because you're going to have rough days. And if you really don't love that thing, then it doesn't matter, because you won't be successful in it, because you won't show up early for that thing. If it's just making you 6 figures a year or whatever kind of thing, you really got to love it and be willing to kind of go down with it, or roll with the punches, we'll say, as punny as that might be for this conversation. But that kind of sticks out for me. I could definitely see it in what you have outlined here with your business. You love what you've been doing it your whole life to some degree. Obviously I didn't know that about the football, but you roll with the curve there, and you kept going, and now you just mentioned that mentorship that's kind of happened your way, and maybe what you've offered back to that individual as well in terms of learning. I'm sure they've grown lots. Their list is probably pretty long. It sounds like they've been coming for a while.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
These guys over a decade now. They've been coming to jiu-jitsu on the regular. Put this thing on the silent over here. This thing buzzing.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah. No. It's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah.
I recommend anybody. You know what I mean. If you've never done a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lesson, do a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lesson, because it's at least to be exposed to it once. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Not at our gym. I'd rather it be at our gym.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's something to experience. Again, my comparison is, swimming. Again, if you've never been in a pool, I mean, what's going on there? So
Yeah. No, I think that's a great great comparison there. I would definitely encourage folks to come check that out. Obviously, I'm a fan of my personal experiences and a fan of yourself. What would be coming up next for you guys on the business side? I mean, I see you guys spend a good chunk of time on like some marketing. You have a great pitch that I've seen before on like Instagram, Facebooks, and different marketing stuff like that. But on the business side, where do you see this going? What's happening there? Are you guys kind of continuing on like the current path? Things are growing well. What's that look like for you guys?
Well, really, the big thing for us, Steve, is just improving on delivery and teaching of the students. So one of the things we're looking at launching, is going to be one of the things we're looking at launching next year is going to be like a little bit more of a. So, for example, right now you come to the academy, right, and we're just sort of playing with this a little bit, but we've got. You come to class, and if you don't come to class, well, you don't come to class, right? We want to keep you engaged and stuff. So we're looking at potentially having you guys have a set scheduled day. So let's say, for example, today's Thursday. So let's say Thursday at 1 p.m. after your BJJ for steps class, you and at most another 5 people would be part of a little pod that would have an appointment with one of the instructors. And basically half an hour to 40-minute session, semi-private session for you guys to be able to iron out any questions or, go further in depth, or for the time to be used as evaluation so that we can actually see that your skills are progressing in a timely sort of manner. So, yeah, we've sort of, since, let's say, we were able to reopen, we really focus a lot on sales and marketing and kind of structuring the program.
Yeah.
Great. But now, how can we actually improve upon, and what metrics might we actually use to ensure that we're getting really good at delivering a result, which is people learning to defend themselves and getting more skilled at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
For sure.
It's interesting because I've devoted so much attention, Steve, on the marketing and sales side for the last few years. It's, it takes a lot of attention, the same or more, in terms of attention on how to build a better service or build a better product. So
yeah, absolutely. It's always that balance, right?
It's always
the development or like the growth and the sales side. I mean, growth happens with both, but sales marketing versus like development. I'll call it like the back end of an app.
Totally.
Versus the sale of the app on my tech experience. So yeah.
Like I'm sure you're familiar with Alex Hormozy, right?
Probably. Oh yeah, no, I repost this stuff. I'm not very good with names until I met someone.
I mean, and he said something which is really interesting. He says, look, at the end of the day, if you don't have a great product, an amazing product that your customers are willing to refer your business to, then eventually marketing and sales is going to basically not be able to push you through, because the costs of ads are always going up, and you can into,
totally.
fatigue or offer fatigue, where people know your offer in your local community, and eventually, so you're able to get if you could get every one of your members, right, to refer you one person who signed up to you, you cut your costs of acquisition per new person in half.
100%. Referrals are huge.
Yeah.
By accident, I think Winnipeg's a small town because I didn't reach out to these people directly, but since coming, there's been a couple of people that I know that have just shown up. I'm like, oh, hey, what's going on? I'm like, how did you get here? Like, oh, I think in this case, on the sales side, they say it takes eight times to be in front of someone on some thing before you close the sale. Sometimes it's only like 2. Someone's an easy seller. They were already interested in that thing. Great. But if, it's new to them and you're pursuing them as a thing, they say it takes 8 times. So, but one of the persons there let me know that they saw your ad, right? I think that's what it was, that they'd come across, and they're like, yeah, I wanted to try this 3-week thing out. And I think they're already moved on. Like, they're already past that. And they're continuing on with classes. And, just one of those things that just so happened wasn't a direct referral from, my end there, but it's been kind of fun to see that happen for you. So, Yeah, I think that's been great for me. Daniel, what is there anything else that you wanted to share with the listeners today? I think we covered like where you come from and where you're going. But if there's anything else that you wanted to mention to anyone out there, and just
Yeah.
for you first.
I mean, if people are interested in learning more, go into the website. I mean, I put it on my little headline,
Yeah,
the dscacademy.ca.
perfect.
It's a great way to initiate a conversation, just get started with a conversation. If you work for a not-for-profit or you have a cause that might be dear to you that you're hoping to raise funds for, it is something we get involved with from time to time, doing fundraisers and trying to get the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community to try and raise funds for. So reach out, whatever the reason may be, even if it turns out just to be a networking thing, that's great,
Awesome.
And otherwise, thanks for the airtime here, Steve. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We look forward to sharing this. And I'm just going to recap it too, though. You guys have a website, dstacademy.ca. You guys are on Instagram. What's the Instagram handle again, though? It's
RGOAWPG.
Perfect. RO.
RGOA.
RGOA.
WPG.
WPG on Instagram. You guys are on Facebook as well. Same name there.
Don't Survive Thrive Academy. Yeah.
That's right, Thrive Academy. Okay, awesome. I'll include that in the links below when we post this, as well as when we do share it. So, listener, don't panic. You'll be able to find Daniel easily through those means too. But if you're just listening, if you look those up, you'll be able to find him. And yeah, I just want to thank you for being on today. There's some noise in my background here, and I will see you probably later today. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me just hit end.